Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am Robcasting it. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, episode number 697. My God, there's all kinds of happenings here in the Robservatory. You can't see it, but I can. And you might see a little bit of it in the beginning of Let's Get Physical Media. But yeah, there's a whole lot of moving and shaking going on here. I'm going to move my desk. I think I'm going to square it off, make some more room here. So you're going to look at me in a different light soon. And I'm going to be streaming from different areas of the Robservatory soon, which will be pretty cool. So I've decided to do a new thing. That's right, everyone, a new thing. And the only way it's going to work is if you have to participate. And you have to participate or it won't work. And what I'm calling it is Everyone's Story. Because after all, everyone has a story to tell. All you have to do is listen. So what is everyone's story? Well, it's kind of like the question of the day. Everyone's story is going to be a topic of the week. And y'all are going to have to tell me a story. That's right. You are going to tell me a story. And every Wednesday is the deadline. I want you to send me a video. That's right. A pre-recorded video of yourself telling me a story. And every Friday, I'm going to string those videos together. Maybe I won't get any. I don't know. I've never done this before. So we'll see if it works. But what I'm asking you to do is tell me a story on video. Record it on Zoom. Record it on your phone. Just make sure it's somewhat technically proficient. I want to be able to see your lovely faces. And I want to be able to hear your story. Otherwise, what would be the point? And what is the first topic? What is the first thing that you're going to tell me? What am I asking you to tell me a story about? Well, this. Tell us about your first kiss. Maybe it was a dog that slobbered all over your face. Maybe it was a unfavorite aunt unloading on you. Who knows? But that's really not the story I want to hear. But I leave that up to you. I need you all to tell me the story of your first kiss. Now, the whole point is, you can't do it anonymously. You have to tell me the story. You have to tell us the story. Any way you want it to go. I want to hear from you. And I need your entries by next Wednesday. So next Wednesday. What's this? 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st. So June 2nd. June 2nd, send me your video. And on Friday, I'm going to play them all. Maybe I won't get any, so I can't play any. But I just figured, you know what? I'm going to prove my point. Every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. Well, you know whose stories we can hear first? Yours. That's right, yours. Tell me about your first kiss. Maybe you've never been kissed. Maybe you had a near miss. Maybe you kissed somebody and it was awful. Maybe you kissed somebody and you know what they say, a kiss is an upper persuasion to a lower invasion. Who knows what happened? I don't know. I want to know. You are going to tell us, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity. And we're going to do this once a week. I'm going to come up with a topic, and we're going to discuss it. So the topic at hand that I would like to discuss today is Ian Fleming's, or it would have been if he was immortal, Ian Fleming's 113th birthday. That's right. The creator of James Bond, author Ian Fleming, would have been 113 years old today. And since we have been talking about in the news the fact that Amazon is going to buy MGM, the current stewards of the Bond film franchise, which they co-own, I've been thinking a lot about, well, what's going to happen to our beloved franchise? How is it going to work? Is Bond going to stick around? Like we've talked about it. Is Bond, as M said in 1995's GoldenEye, a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War? Does anyone ever care? Does anyone care about James Bond films? Yesterday I was on a Midnight's Edge stream with Tom and Andre and a bunch of us, and we were discussing On Her Majesty's Secret Service from 1969, directed by Peter Hunt, starring George Lazenby in his one outing as the titular spy, 007. And I guess he wouldn't be titular because they never used the word James Bond in the title, but you know what I mean. So the question is, Tom had never seen the Bond franchise. He's been going through it over the last couple of months for the very first time, and he'd never seen it. And it's been very interesting hearing his responses. They're not wrong, but it's been very interesting hearing his responses to, well, the James Bond franchise. So, craziness. And yesterday we talked about On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and it got me thinking. I was like, my God, I wish I had remembered today was Ian Fleming's 113th birthday, because I would have mentioned it last night on Midnighter, Robservations Midnighter. By the way, thank you all. Robservations Midnighter is a lot of fun, and it's all because of you. It's been great bringing on imagination connoisseurs onto the show. So it's been a lot of fun. And I just want to remind you that for those of you who might not know, tomorrow night on Midnight Metal, we are bringing on C.K. Smile of the Swiss metal band. He is the front man, the lead singer of the Swiss metal band Chaosium, the first truly metal man that we are having on Midnight Metal. So I would advise all of you to run on over to YouTube and watch a Chaosium video, and then come back and join us tomorrow for Midnight Metal. Fuck yeah. We're going to get metal. Yeah. So, anyway, now on to Bond. So where are we at? Where are we at with Bond? So anyway, obviously, I was like, oh, somebody must have some article about Ian Fleming's birthday. And lo and behold, there certainly was. Yesterday, there was an article that was published in USA Today, and I figured I'd jump on that, share it with you. The merits of James Bond, why Ian Fleming's legacy matters in 2021. Is James Bond an emblem of, I can't even read today. Is James Bond an emblem of toxic masculinity? Judge him based on his merits and realize that his life-saving heroics should be celebrated. This was written by Luca Ladan. He's an opinion contributor to the USA Today. Yesterday, May 26th, this was published at 11:57 a.m. 24 movies, with the 25th to come in October. 14 novels. That's only the ones written by Ian Fleming. More than $7 billion grossed at the global box office. Over 100 million books sold. Born 113 years ago today, Ian Fleming changed the world. James Bond's creator was not solely responsible for the popularity of the Bond franchise, consumed by at least 20% of the world's population, but the phrases Bond villain and Bond girl would not be common parlance without him. Fleming left us with a character who can be celebrated and criticized, not unlike himself. Decades later, the Bond franchise finds itself at a crossroads and a new part owner, with Amazon recently purchasing Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer for more than $8 billion. Is the British spy a misogynist dinosaur, as Irish columnist Donald Clark has claimed? Is Bond an emblem of mid-century British imperialism, as Ebert co-contributor Kyle Turner argues? Bond's story is not just misogyny and imperialism. From outdated geopolitics to the occasional show of sexism, James Bond is a flawed character. But the lead of the Bond story is not misogyny or imperialist Britain. In today's hyper-polarized society, we assume the worst of others too often, and only to score political points that don't spell victory for public discourse. Judgment is especially common among younger generations like mine, which tend to focus on content aging well rather than the quality of the content itself. We need to apply the Hebrew phrase, Dan lechaf zechut, to Bond, judging him righteously. Judge the Bond character on his merits, not his demerits. At a time when the merits of masculinity itself are being questioned, leading young men to question themselves, the Bond character matters now more than ever. When toxic masculinity and mansplaining have entered mainstream discourse, there is a parallel between the purpose of Bond in cinema and the purpose of young men in society. If Bond hasn't aged well, what does that say about traditional masculinity? We must tread carefully with the gender shaming. Young men should not be ashamed of looking up to Bond. Charisma, competence, and courage stand the test of time. In the 1955 novel Moonraker, my personal favorite, not mine, the author's, Bond stops a nuclear warhead from destroying London, but he also saves Gala Brand, the novel's Bond girl, from a landslide at the Dover Cliffs by shielding her from the falling rocks. If that's misogynistic or imperialistic, sign me up. When he's not protecting men and women alike, the British spy teaches people to learn new skills and hone their hobbies, from golf and skiing to the intricacies of cocktail making and conversation. Whether grappling with a villain or his own personal demons, Bond is a case study in overcoming adversity for the greater good. As an orphan, he reminds people to count their blessings and appreciate their beginnings, no matter how humble. A capable Bond personifies the never-ending pursuit of self-improvement as a means of self-fulfillment. To quote Ernest Hemingway, a Bondian figure himself, there is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self. There is a reason why more than 80% of men consider Bond a good role model. Even nearly 70% of women reject the notion that Bond perpetuates damaging stereotypes about masculinity because they see value in Bondian masculinity. Because of Dan Lekaf Zakut. To be male and human is to be fallible, and Bond is no exception. He has failed time and time again, so much so that Bond's fallibility can be as instructive as his competence. At the end of the novel Moonraker, the British spy does not get the girl, as Brand chooses to marry another man. In Fleming's words, the exit line. He must get out of these two young lives and take his cold heart elsewhere. There must be no regrets, no false sentiment. He must play the role which she expected of him. The tough man of the world, the secret agent, the man who was only a silhouette. Alas, Mishmani Penny. Such nuance escapes headlines proclaiming Bond too toxic for the 21st century. Bond can be a hero and a cautionary tale. Why expect perfection when it is so much less interesting? On Ian Fleming's birthday, may we all give characters like James Bond a fair shake. Let's celebrate the Bond character before criticizing him. Let's judge merits before demerits. But most importantly, let us be thankful that James Bond is around to save the world in October. One more time. I like that article. I like James Bond. I'm a lifelong, unapologetic Bond fan. I never thought that there would be a time when, I have to say, I was watching an article, or I was watching some video where there was a black commentator asking a white pundit, what does he think about his whiteness? I was watching this, and it was so funny because I was thinking to myself when I watch these things, I'm like, huh. And I've never once thought about my whiteness. I was thinking about that, like my eye color. I have hazel eyes. I'm thinking about it right now, but during the course of my day, I never think about my eye color. The only time I ever really think about it is throughout my life. There's been one constant: women have always liked my eyes and my eyelashes because they're very long. I've heard that over and over and over again. But lately, I've had to think about myself as being white, being cis, a heterosexual male, being middle-aged. I mean, it's very interesting. I never thought of myself in these ways. And I wonder, is this because I have white privilege? I don't know. Do I like the Bond character because I admire him because he's like me? And I was like, nope. I like Bond because of all the things this article brings up. The man is very good at what he does. He knows a lot of things. He's a sensualist. He loves his pleasures. He loves his earthly pleasures. He loves his women. He loves his booze. He loves good food. he knows how to enjoy them, and he knows a lot about a great many things. And if the world needs saving, Bond can do it. What's not to love? I never want to live in a world where people complain that there's someone like James Bond around to help us out. But anyway, I will never tire of the James Bond franchise. But maybe that's because I, too, am a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a product of the Cold War, just like M said. I'd like to think not, but who knows? Now, there's another article that I wanted to read. Now, this was back when No Time to Die was getting made and Danny Boyle just exited the film. This is from The Guardian. It was written by Martha Gill, and it was published on Wednesday, the 22nd of August, 2018. The new James Bond film is in trouble. First, there was Daniel Craig's diva-ish remark that he'd rather slash his wrists than play Bond again before some reason being dragged miserably back to the franchise. I'm not surprised. Can you imagine trying to make a Bond film work in 2018? A film where your hero is a casually sexist, violent government employee who is oddly fussy about his suits and his cocktails. At this, the moment of #MeToo, the sharing economy, charity shops, and recycling, you simply can't. There's just nothing to work with. In fact, I'd go so far as to say there hasn't been a time more hostile to James Bond since he first came out. A new film just has too many things to do. First, it must prevent Bond coming across as an aging baby boomer trying disastrously to chat up millennials. Would you like a spin in my car? I have a very important job, you know. Who can surely find someone better to shag. It must somehow shift his image away from one of those people on Instagram who are always taking selfies in business class lounges at airports. And it must avoid portraying him as an emblem of state-sponsored violence every time he drives dramatically through a market. His body count must be in the thousands in grocers alone. The trouble is, the films are deeply rooted in the ideals of the 1950s, the era of imperial pride, owning a Jaeger Le Coultre watch, and sleeping with your secretary. In the decades that followed, Britishness, materialism, and sex with employees have all lapsed in and out of fashion. Right now, all three could not be more definitely out. Could the franchise be rescued by casting a woman as Bond? No. I'm afraid we've already missed that moment. The female James Bond, materialistic, campy, disdainful, having as much casual sex as possible, is of course a woman of the 1990s, the natural counterpart of the 1950s male. In fact, we've had a female James Bond already, we just didn't notice. The female James Bond was Samantha Jones from Sex and the City. She had the corresponding priorities, clothes, compliments, and cocks, the approach to formal introductions, hello, my name is Fabulous, and even the terrible puns. I'm a trisexual. I'll try anything once. But we moved on from that now. There's no group that aspires to James's dodgy values and dodgier exploding stationery. He just doesn't fit anywhere anymore. After all the narrow escapes, it's finally time for James Bond to die. Well, thank you, Martha Gill. You know what? While everyone else is playing identity politics and worrying about whether you're going to use a pronoun or dead name somebody, or whether or not somebody's being respectful, or whether you're going to have a contract before you go to bed with somebody to make sure you know exactly what you're both going to do to each other. You know what's going to happen then? The world's going to fucking end. While everyone's having these fucking conversations about feelings and all this shit, we need James Bond. We need people that can strap on their Walther PPK and against all odds defeat evil and save the day. Because my contention is, even as a fictional character, the world that we're living in now, we're gonna talk about our feelings until we're blue in the face, and nothing's gonna get finished, and the world will end, as we're having these ridiculous arguments. You know, the world was evolving just fine until the last 10 years happened. These things that we wanted, these changes, the respect that people have long deserved, they're finally realizing that kind of respect. That was happening. It was happening because we have people on the front lines guarding our freedom. Those sexist, misogynist dinosaurs, those relics of the Cold War, because they're the only people that understand what's going to happen when you go out into the real world, and no one cares about your feelings. The universe is indifferent, and you know what? You can talk about what pronouns you use until you're blue in the face. When the bomb goes off and blows up you and your family, because there was no more James Bond because he was canceled, then what? By God! What are we going to do? We need people like Bond. We need people that are capable. We need people that understand what the job entails. We need people that get that sometimes you have to act quickly and without remorse. We need people like that. If we don't have them, even in fiction we need them, because fiction reminds us, well, hell, man, the world is a pretty dark place, and we better have guys like this. I wonder, I'd like to believe that every major country in the world has a guy like James Bond or a woman like James Bond who is a capable military strategist that can save our bacon when the fryer gets too crispy. I don't even know what metaphor was that. That was not a good on-the-fly metaphor. I'm sorry. Or off the cuff. It was not good. Anyway, let me go back a little further. I'm going to go back to November 5th, 2015, and read one last article about Bond. This is from Relevant magazine. Relevant magazine. Andrew Barber wrote this November 5th, 2015. Is it time to retire James Bond? The Bond series has always been an interesting reflection of the culture that produced it. And with Spectre hitting theaters tomorrow, it's time to re-examine the spy's legacy. Starting in 1962 with Sean Connery as our favorite secret agent and Dr. No, Bond has proceeded to outlast Cold Wars, government betrayals, terrorist threats, and an increasingly intelligent video game console. With each new villain, each new Felix, the American CIA agent who sometimes works with Bond, and each new Bond girl, we're allowed to take a peek into the cultural settings of the film. But one of the more interesting parts of Bond is his ability to sneak past and challenge our American hero's sensibilities. While we have continually cycled through autonomous middle-class tough guy heroes, John Wayne, Bruce Willis, Jason Bourne, Bond has always been an upper-class servant to royalty. He dresses with style, uses gadgets from the future, makes horrible puns, and drinks fancy drinks. Rocky, he is not. But Bond has still managed to fall into that strictly for men camp. He represents nice cigars, scotch, in the days when you wore a suit to work. No matter how advanced our gender relations become, Bond always comes back to remind us that the world that the most important thing is still the desires of white men. How about the desires of all men? How about that? Initially, there was some kickback to the hypersexuality, but Bond has gone on to prove that the longer you stick around, the more conservative you become in the public eye. Granted, the portrayal of women in Bond films has gotten better. In some of the Sean Connery movies, he basically manipulates and or blackmails women into having sex with them. Watch the first 30 minutes of Thunderball, while the Pierce Brosnan era actually reinvented M as a woman. Recently, the movies have mostly dumped the horrendous sexual innuendo names of the female characters like Xenia Onatop, don't think about it too hard, and the beginning of the last few films have dropped the objectifying female body montage that has come to be a defining feature of the series. In many ways, yes, of course, but look at Instagram. Look at how many women have Instagram accounts. Look at OnlyFans. I mean, where's the world now? Anyway. In many ways, the slow dignification of women in Bond films is great praise to the efforts of many over the last century. Probably the overwhelming appeal of Bond, though, beyond the women and the cars and the gunfights, is his ability to do everything while allowing nothing to be his master. Bond kills all day without guilt or nightmares of the blood on his hands. He never flips out and loses his temper in a moment of post-traumatic stress. He drinks and smokes in every other scene, but he'll never get drunk or have a hangover or get lung cancer. In 50 years of films, Bond has always stayed young and fit. He has no real community, but we never see him feeling lonely. He sleeps with whoever he pleases, but never has performance issues, never gets STDs, never gets a woman pregnant, and never masturbates. We don't catch him with a stash of porn in his briefcase, and the women never, ever say no. Essentially, he has a consequences-free sexuality. Once again, we hear the confusing message. Sex is everything, do anything to get it, and sex is nothing. It doesn't matter that much. This mentality has affected generations of men who have bought into the lie that they can use pornography the same way we eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Casually and whenever we want with little consequence. Just quit when you get married. If it was easy to pick up, it should be easy to put down, right? But by losing the negative consequences of sexuality, Bond also loses the positive consequences of meaningful sex. He never feels the power of a woman's genuine delight in him. Really? I don't think that's true. He never feels the power of a woman's genuine delight in him. He never trades in cynical lust for committed love. He never knows what it means to have someone love you despite your weaknesses, because he never reveals any. Can I just stop for a minute? Can I just, I want to pause for just a second and point out that when we meet James Bond, he's on missions. He's at work. He's doing what he has to do to save the planet or thwart the criminals or whatever. We don't know how Bond feels in his personal life. We don't delve into his personal life not that much. We meet him on missions when he's doing what he has to do to survive. And this idea that we pillory him as some kind of paragon of white maleness, or we're not, but this article is, this guy, what a bunch of self-loathing. I mean, dude, if you were on a mission where you would die tomorrow, wouldn't you want to drink in as much of life as you could in the seconds you have left before you're dead? And if you're James Bond and you're a hunka burn in love with a Walther PPK in your pocket and the knowledge that you have, and you're a former military man and you're traveling all over the world and meeting fabulous people in fabulous circles, why wouldn't you indulge in all the sensual pleasures? Because tomorrow you could be dead. I think it's ridiculous to call Bond a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a product of the Cold War. I mean, if we didn't have people like him on the front lines, we'd all be dead. And it's just strange to me. Bond may be naked, but he's never truly naked before anyone. That's not true. Didn't you see Casino Royale? And in this way, he can never be truly loved. What the Bond women and we love is the facade. In Casino Royale, the most self-aware entry in the series to date, one of the Bond girls even comments on this saying, "You've got your armor back up," or armor, since it's a British thing. You may think a vulnerable, committed Bond would be boring, but that's a quick assumption. We only think that because most action movies end at the altar. Marriages aren't interesting enough, apparently, for the big screen. Many of you are probably arguing that I'm not taking into account On Her Majesty's Secret Service, in which Bond falls in love, gets married, and loses his wife to gunfire, or the recent Daniel Craig iterations, to which I have a quick response. While Secret Service was clearly an attempt to humanize Bond, this has had little impact on the overall series and is rarely mentioned in any of the other films. In the most recent years, Daniel Craig has, in many ways, humanized the agent and dealt with many of my complaints while facing the aspects that made us love him in the first place, which is why Daniel Craig has been a crowd favorite Bond. But many of the patterns still remain, and so far, Craig only accounts for a handful of the 24 Bond movies. Ultimately, even as a fantasy, albeit a very cool one, James Bond falls short. To many, he represents the ideal man for our society, which is why it's so ironic that, at almost every point, he portrays a pattern of life that would lead to serious pain and emotional catastrophe. True, this stuff is just fun escapism, but Bond has stood as a dominant cultural icon for years. There is a reason he has survived, and there is a reason we find him alluring. The problem is that we are settling. We may envy Bond, but we don't get to see those moments where Bond envies us. What a load of horse shit. I'm sorry, but this is a load of horse shit. The whole point of a James Bond movie is you're watching an agent at work. To expect him to be somebody who's, mindful of everyone's feelings or thinking about whether or not, anything that this author was talking about. It's ridiculous to think that our heroes are supposed to be put in positions where they're supposed to be icons or people that we are to emulate in our real life. He's a fantasy character. He's filling, what I don't understand is all of us, imagination connoisseurs, men or women, we all have idealized versions of the people we want to be with. Just like I might fantasize about having sex with Caroline Munro and her guys as Naomi in the movie The Spy Who Loved Me. I know that's not real. I'm not sitting here wondering, where's my Caroline Munro? Why can't I find her? She wanted to kill Bond. She looked great. Her voice was dubbed, but she sounded awesome. She's a fantasy character. She isn't real. And as a person, as an astute viewer, I understand that. Both men and women, people in general, whatever your gender is, whatever your shape, size, color, creed, whatever it is, you have fantasies. Everybody has fantasies. I just don't understand all of this reality denying that seems to be going on now, that people don't want to admit that they want to fuck. People want to fuck, and they want to fuck people that are hot. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't care whether you're straight, gay, trans, whatever. You want to fuck people, and that's good. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you can revel in your wanton sexuality. I don't want to have some conversation when I'm in bed with somebody who's hot, like Elizabeth, and we're having a negotiation about, well, tonight, honey, I'd like you to go down on me, but that's only if you go down on me, and I'll go down on you too, right? Okay? What the hell? Nobody does that. That isn't the real world. And when you have fantasy characters, you want your fantasy characters to kick ass and be awesome. I do not understand. What kind of world are we going to live in where all of our speech is policed, our thoughts are policed, everything's policed? You know what? People are real. Everybody knows what it's like to be flesh and blood human beings in the world. One day, you're going to be fucking dead. And you know what you're going to know? The same thing all the people in Full Metal Jacket knew. The dead only know one thing. It's better to be alive. And you know what else it's better to be doing? It's better to be fucking than not fucking. And James Bond is saving the world, killing bad dudes, killing bad people, bad chicks too. He's getting laid. He's drinking Bollinger champagne at the proper temperature. He's eating beluga caviar from the very finest place in the Caspian Sea to get it. Who doesn't want to be like that? I understand it's a fantasy character. I've been watching James Bond my whole life. I love James Bond. I'd love to be James Bond. I know I'm never going to be James Bond, but it would be fun to be him, although I don't know if I'd like the everybody trying to kill me part. But man, this idea that there's no place in the world for James Bond today. My God, we need James Bond more than ever. Because our namby-pamby society, when everybody's like, I'm sorry, but you've just offended me by your use of the wrong word. The wrong word? You're mad I used a word that's wrong? What? How about this? Here's my fist in your face. Is that worse or better? Would you rather I don't offend you with my speech, or should I smack you in the face? I mean, come on. It's like Bond... Beginning of Goldfinger, what happens? Bond sees a criminal, a henchman, a man about to crack him over the face in the beginning of the movie. And what does he do? He throws the belly dancer whips her around to take the blow instead. People will be like, oh my God, how misogynistic. No, man, she was in on it. She set him up. She brought him back to her hotel room or her little room. She knew there was that henchman there. She knew it. She set Bond up. People will be like, it's misogynist. It's not misogynist. He's got to get the job done. He's got to get the hell out of there. So a woman took the blow. A woman set him up. I mean, it's so weird. You know, we are equal opportunity bad people. All of us. Men, women. Every shape, size, color, creed, religion. There can be bad people everywhere. And that's why we need James Bond. Because if we didn't have people like him, and of course, the real life equivalent, our world would go to hell in a handbasket. So I think, by God, we need James Bond. We need James Bond now more than ever. We need the ruthlessness. We need the uncaring. We need the incredibly talented and skillful James Bond. I mean, that man is a cunning linguist, and he also can defuse a nuclear weapon 7 seconds before it's going to go off, like we saw in Goldfinger. My God, James Bond being pilloried in the press. We need Bond. Now more than ever. What do you think? Am I wrong? Am I off base? You all know. Vesna knows. She'll come to my defense. She'll tell me, yeah. She'll tell me who she dreams about. She's not going to sit there and go, that guy's a misogynist. I don't know who he is that she's dreaming about, but same with you, Willow. Come on. Help me out here. Help me out. James Bond, now more than ever. Yes? God. People. Anyway, that's what I was thinking on this, Ian Fleming's 113th birthday. Or it would have been if he was still alive. But he's not. Anyway, I got some letters. Let's see what we have. You know what I got? I got a letter from Catherine. Catherine's letter. Catherine says, hey, Rob, I was watching Midnighter Episode 5, and you compared and contrasted the current state of the James Bond franchise with the current state of the Mission Impossible franchise, and something's perplexing me. I agree that Eon should stop worrying about what other franchises are doing and should go back to setting trends like they used to. Look no further than the inconsistent story arc of the Daniel Craig era to see what I mean. We actually discussed it on Midnight Metal 09. However, just because they're in a bit of a rut right now, I don't see how that makes Bond irrelevant in the modern era. Frankly, I don't find Bond's ability to single-handedly thwart a megalomaniac's evil schemes today any less realistic than it was in the 60s and 70s. Yet Ethan Hunt does it all the time in his franchise, and you seem very happy with it and had no problem with his relevancy or believability in being able to save the world in the 21st century. Is that not a contradiction? I understand there's obvious differences between the characters themselves, but in a nutshell, they both work for an intelligence agency, are assigned missions, and get gadgets to help get the job done. So, as much as I'd love to see an anthology Bond series set in the 50s or 60s, channeling Ian Fleming's novels, that's something I suggested, I don't see why we can't have both. After all, if Amazon is sinking $500 million into their Middle-earth TV series, then can we not have both a Bond TV series and a film series? Granted, that hinges on whether or not Eon would be open to selling or cooperating with Amazon, and I disagree with this idea that's been floating around in the Bond community for the last few years that Broccoli and Wilson want to sell the company. On the contrary, the fact that they stuck it out with MGM through numerous bankruptcy-related delays over the years seems to speak to how happy they were with their arrangement, in which Eon retains complete creative control without having to finance the films, but MGM gets to own said films they produce. Hell, even less than an hour after the announcement of Amazon acquiring MGM, Eon released a statement further cementing their commitment to keeping Bond an exclusively theatrical engagement. And while he hasn't granted many interviews over the years, Michael G. Wilson's son, Greg Wilson, has been an associate producer on the franchise for 22 years now. Thus, he seems to be the heir apparent whenever Broccoli and Wilson chose to retire. Or rather, the latter two can remain the face of Eon while Greg runs the company. Who knows? But assuming Eon can work with Amazon, then I'd love there to be a 60s-era show or films while continuing the modern era of the franchise as well. I also have no problem with Bond being a womanizer. Goddamn right. And I think the franchise has long since grown out of outdated tendencies which could be construed as misogynistic to audiences who actually watch the films, as opposed to writing lazy articles criticizing the character, of which there's been a lot of those lately. Hence, why M broke the fourth wall in GoldenEye and addresses Bond's sexist, misogynist past directly to tell the audience that, yeah, we get it, and we're moving past it now. And for the most part, I think they have, save for a couple of hiccups in the Craig era. Lastly, I think it's quite interesting that every Bond villain's evil scheme somehow is referencing contemporary events, be it the Cold War, the energy crisis, the space race, the Silicon Valley tech boom, the Soviet-Afghan war, the rise of 24/7 media networks, the Bolivian water wars, WikiLeaks, etc. And isn't Casino Royale a glowing example of how Bond can still be relevant and interesting in the modern age? So the question stands, why don't you think James Bond can still be relevant in the 21st century when Ethan Hunt is doing the same thing, albeit in a more action-driven way? Thanks, and have a great day. Well, Catherine, the reason I wanted to start today's day out with your letters because it was a great fucking letter, so thank you for writing that. Very much appreciated. Here's the thing. I think that the Bond franchise was steeped in geopolitics even when it was created, being that it's in the Cold War. I think the real problem with the relevancy of James Bond, they've tried to make it more modern, more hard-hitting, more realistic, setting it more firmly in the real world. But in doing that, the real world is getting to the point where I don't think it necessarily serves the Bond franchise. And the thing about the Mission Impossible franchise is it's done things like create the cadre of spies that are willing to burn the world down. The Mission Impossible franchise does, in fact, always have a tinge of the fantastical in it. While Bond has done that in Moonraker and in Spy Who Loved Me and in other films, You Only Live Twice, it's still steeped in I think in reality. And now the villains that Bond would be going after, the threats to the world, whether it's fundamentalist terrorists from around the world or something like that, I don't know if that lends itself really to great or fun movie making. I mean, it's a bit of a tough call, but I maybe you're right. I mean, I love the Mission Impossible franchise because it is tinged with a bit of the fantastic, and the action scenes are over the top. I like spy thrillers. I don't know. I mean, I think Bond. If anything, I like Bond's fun, fast-living, we'll call them fast-living ways, because I think we need to be reminded of the fact that being a human being is to indulge in pleasures. These fleshy meat sacks that contain our hearts, our souls, our intellect. I mean, if we're not going to indulge them and we're not going to enjoy the pleasures of the flesh, consensually, of course. I mean, it's not like Bond's a rapey dude. The women that he meets are certainly happy to be under his spell. I mean, it's like what we're doing, what our modern age, I think, is doing is bleeding all the fun out of life. I mean, come on. Bring the sensualists back amongst all of us. Where'd y'all go? I mean, why people are not having sex anymore. Young people are having sex less and less and less. Why? Because I think where are the cool people? Let's get cooler, people. What we need is our society needs to get cooler, more awesome. We're becoming less awesome by the day. And that's not a very good answer, Catherine. But you know what? I like your letter, and it's more important what you're thinking anyway. What I'm thinking doesn't matter. But a great letter nonetheless. Thank you for writing in. Father Karras. Not too vulgar display of power. Father Damien Karras is here. It even says the email. Father, if you're the devil, why not make these straps disappear? Well, that's much too vulgar display of power, Karras. Hi, Rob. I've never really been one to watch much of the long-form content on YouTube, but I discovered you via SJU when you got the Duel of the Fates script, and I subbed so I wouldn't miss any new scoops. Then the pandemic, when I needed a break from the news, wow, the news was exhausting on multiple fronts back then, there you were. How convenient. I got hooked on your in-depth commentary and all things Post-Geek singularity and those dulcet tones. Anyway, many a time I'd jot down thoughts while listening, but never really got around to formally sending anything. But the other day on the John Campea Show segment, oddly started checking out his channel via you rather than the other way around, as I suspect has been the case for most. I don't know if many people from the John Campea Show check me out. About Amazon's purchase of MGM, you made a suggestion that got me a bit riled up. Go back to Bond's days as a naval commander. Holy shit, Rob, I want this. If I was a writer or director or had any creative talent whatsoever, I'd be knocking on Bezos' door already to pitch him. Not sure he'd appreciate that, but what the heck? Nothing ventured. Anyway, not likely something that gets any or much attention on your side of the border, but before your boys, our boys, and the Brits stormed the beaches of Normandy in 1944, there was an Allied forces, largely Canadian infantry and led mission in August 1942 to storm the beach of Dieppe, which has long since been seen as a disastrously failed trial run, 6,000 troops with 963 killed, 2,400 injured, and 2,000 captured, of the D-Day plan in order to probe the defenses to see what would be encountered and placate Stalin's demands for a second front to be opened. So, the more recent development is the suggestion that this mission had another long, classified, forgotten primary goal. Declassified documents show that Ian Fleming was on board a frigate offshore monitoring this invasion. SOE docs seem to indicate the primary mission may have actually been for the beach incursion to serve as a distraction for a small team of Fleming's men, the 30 AU, to infiltrate the town and secure one of the four rotor Enigmas and return it to Fleming. Bletchley Park, where Turing was stationed, had only cracked the 3-rotor, and the Allies were increasingly losing ships at sea. The invasion force was so quickly repelled that the entire mission failed, however. Whether this is actually what the invasion was about is up for study, open to interpretation, but certainly a good candidate among many from his war years, no doubt, heady days, foundation story episodes for the man who would become 007. The Canadian Forces' role in the war doesn't often get much attention in popular culture, and on our own wouldn't be enough of a draw to justify a budget to do something justice. But this would be one of those rare opportunities justified via character that has a global reach and appeal that, as a Canadian, I'd love to see make it to the screen. Both of my grandfathers served in World War II, maternal in the Canadian Navy and the fraternal in the, it just says Ian, I don't know which you mean, in someone's Navy. It's just Canadian. The Canadian ship was the HMCS Stormont, which was later refitted and used as a yacht by Aristotle Onassis. Anyway, writing this got me thinking about them a bit, and that their service and of many, it got me thinking about them a bit, and that theirs and the service of many others some 75 plus years ago means that I get the simple privilege of being able to vote for an imperfect government every 4 years. But I'm getting off topic now, I see. Anyway, have a better day, Rob. I know mine would be better if I knew what elixirs you got all of your energy from. Damien. Yep, my mom rushed home from the theater to check her 2-year-old son's scalp for a 666 back in 76. I love that. What a great letter. Thank you so much, Father Karras. I'm sorry you were locked away in that cell with Brad Dourif for all that time. But, you know, it's good to hear from you. Thank you for being you. Which is good. I love it. David Kokol. You know what? I know David. It's David Kokol. It's David Kokol. That's what it is. It's David Kokol is the right way to pronounce it. David Kokol. Hello, David. Hi, Rob. I hope you're well. I've been hearing a lot of discussion about how dated, stagey, and hokey the original Star Trek looks to modern viewers. Like you, I grew up watching the original series in syndication when it was the only Star Trek. I know the series very well, but I'd not watched it in years until this month. I've been going back and picking episodes of the original series to rewatch. I've seen 15 in the past few weeks. I've watched a few from each season. It is obvious to say that the characters are great and that the chemistry between Shatner, Nimoy, and Kelly is iconic. Part of the reason the first season of fans went nuts about the series was these characters. But I've also been loving the visuals. The sets might be simple, but the lighting of the starbase walls and the menagerie makes me want to lick the screen. Oh, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. Atmospheric and tasty. There are so many examples of great lighting and cinematography. Yes, these episodes have been remastered, but instead of accentuating the flaws, the process has emphasized its strengths. The shows look sumptuous and beautiful. Just my thoughts. Younger generations might not appreciate the look of TOS, and I do have a lifelong loyalty to this series, but I'd been away for a while, and I wasn't expecting to be visually blown away as I have been as I watched the original series. Keep up the great work. Regards, David Kukol. Well, David, what a great letter. And I feel the same way. I mean, it to me, Star Trek, the original series, and Next Generation takes place in their universe. So I know I've been watching it since I was a kid, just like James Bond. It's hard for me to be objective, but I certainly enjoy it. I certainly enjoy the look of the original series. I mean, it's like you said, it's not our world. It's a future world that's never going to come to pass. So what's not to love? What's not to love? A great letter from you, David. Thank you for writing in. Very much appreciate it. Let's see. I have many more here. And, This one, Terrier, all the way from Norway, says, So, I watched Army of the Dead tonight. I was so in love with the Snyder cut of Justice League. How could he falter like this? I started making a list of grievances, but I had to stop. I don't want this movie to last for 10 hours. I was 20 minutes in, and I wanted it so much to end. This is the list I got to before I lost hope. Stupid, stupid Army of the Dead. Transporting an insanely guarded payload. Okay, let's talk to each other and not look at the road. Great. Hummer's guarding payload swerves away from goddamn station wagon. Boom. Soldier does not seem to know what payload means over the radio. You just saw your fellow soldiers mauled by something. You've not ran far enough after a 30-second sprint up a hillside. Even zombies are so taken by the Las Vegas skyline, they stop to take it all in. Why is that crane guy playing Tetris dropping containers from way far up? Nice. The IR temperature checker used in camp is shittier than the one I have in my home. I gave up. I won't pause this movie every 5 minutes and watch for 10 hours. I'm 20 minutes in, and I want it to be over. How on earth could this have been made by the same man who had scenes so tense in the remake of the legendary Dawn of the Dead? It had scenes that to this day scare me so much I need a pillow, and I have a large body to hide. What is this movie? It's hardly entertainment. It's an insult. How can he be happy sending this out? Is he high on his own supply? I can't fathom it. I don't even want to watch the Snyder cut in a while. Zack Snyder, you have insulted my snout. I have spoken. Terrier Mork. Well, I tell you, I watched the Red Letter Media review of this film, and I have to say I agreed with everything in it. This movie is monumentally stupid, and it shamefully rips off things like Aliens. I mean, down to dialogue and shots. I mean, there's a lot, and they do a good job in the Red Letter Media review of showing you all of the things that he's name-checking. This is not, I mean, maybe it's supposed to be homage, but I think it's a little bit more than that. I think it's definitely a bit problematic, if you ask me. So, I too was not a fan of Army of the Dead. I felt like it was being made up on the fly, as I've said. But, yeah. I know. Mario Lopez, our friend Mario Lopez, all the way from Portugal, has written it again. Hi, Rob. First of all, how amazing was it to be on live at the last Midnight Metal? Go forward with those 3 movies. I support that idea. Go forward is what he's saying. Yes. So on Midnight Metal, Brett Pierce, the director, one of the directors of The Wretched, which was the #1 film last summer, and Dave Parker and I were lamenting about the fact that it's very difficult to get movies off the ground. You go and have meetings. I used to call them Evian meetings. After I made Free Enterprise, I went to meetings for a year and nothing happened. I must have met with 100 people. And you're never meeting with people that can greenlight your project, and stuff doesn't happen. So I suggested that the 3 of us should band together and we should have a telethon and see if between now and Halloween we could raise, and I called it the Raise Hellathon. And we want to raise $6,666,000 to make 3 horror films. 3 $2.2 million horror films. And one of the things that we would do, because I've learned this from my experiences with crowdfunding, is we would be totally transparent with the money. So at any time, our donors, people that donated to us, could check in and see exactly how much we've spent to the penny, which would actually be part of the experience I've often talked about on this show, showing all of you how to produce a film. Well, we'd make 3 movies, and you would all be witnesses, anybody who donated to this. Now, do I think we could actually raise $6,666,000 by Halloween? Well, probably not. But I know one thing, if we didn't try, I know for a fact we wouldn't be able to do it. So, I don't know. I'm thinking about it. We would launch it on June 6th at 6 hours and 6 minutes into the day, Pacific time. So at 666, June 666, we would launch this, and from then to October 31st, 2021, we'd try and make or raise $6,666,000. And we would make, over the course of the year, 3 horror films that would all debut on Halloween night in 2022. I don't know. What do you think? Anyway, that's what Mario Lopez was talking about. Mario goes on to say, so, today, I send another letter because contrary to what I thought possible, there are people that don't like Joseph Kosinski's film Oblivion from 2013 with Tom Cruise, Morgan Freeman, Andrea Riseborough, and the very beautiful Olga Kurylenko. She is smoking hot, and a Bond girl. Returning to the initial question, how wrong these people are, and I even know some of them personally. Oblivion is perfect in all aspects. The visuals are amazing. How cool is the art and technology used in 2077? That house suspended in the clouds is a dream of modernity and architecture. Here's a link for the amazing collection concept art by Andre Wallen and Tom Tenery. Let me drop that into the live chat so you can look at it. So here you go. But this film still has the courage to present us as an alternative to all of this art and architecture, a simple house by the lake, challenging us to a choice. In what environment would we prefer to live? Another point where you can see the passion and dedication that was given to that kind of, well, it looks like a helicopter, the bubble ship. Rob, you should buy the Oblivion bubble ship model for your amazing collection. There is a model of the bubble ship, and I do not have it, but I wouldn't mind getting it. Oblivion also presents to us, as if it were a set of postcards, the destruction that the planet Earth suffered, to the point of this twisted and ruined landscape reaching even a strange, dramatic, even melancholic beauty. Oh, I cannot forget this. The music of the film is excellent. It is a great score. About the argument, I wanted to highlight 3 things. One is that Oblivion gives us not only one, but even several surprises without having to subvert our expectations. The second is that the fact that the ship originally investigating the Tet was named Odyssey, which alludes to Homer's epic poem and its hero Odysseus. The Greeks win the Trojan War by way of the Trojan horse, much like how the humans defeat the Tet because it allowed Jack to bring a captive without realizing he is also bringing a bomb. History has a tendency to repeat itself, which is ignored or forgotten. The problem is that the Tet did not know the story of the Trojan horse. Also, the Tet was not able to understand one of the best characteristics that we, human beings, have. the ability to take actions as individuals and not something collective, and above all, of being sometimes willing to sacrifice ourselves for noble causes. And it is this, and it is in this sense that I arrive to the third point. The best scene in the film, the dialogue between Jack and Tet, a.k.a. Sally. Part of Jack's speech is taken from a book, Lays of Ancient Rome, by Thomas Babington Macaulay. This is what Jack says to Sally. Jack, I don't know what you are, or where you're from, but I'd like to tell you about something I read, a story from Rome, a city you destroyed. It's a classic. There was a guy, Herodotus, held a bridge against a whole army. And what Herodotus said was, how can a man die better? Sally, you don't have to die, Jack. She doesn't have to die. Jack, everybody dies, Sally. The thing is, to die well. What Herodotus said was, how can a man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temple of his gods? Sally says, I created you, Jack. I am your God. Jack says, fuck you, Sally. Thank you, Robert, for reading another long letter. Kind regards, Mario Lopez from Portugal. Mario, that's a great letter, man. Clearly, your love of Oblivion comes through loud and clear. I have to say, I think Oblivion is a great science fiction movie. It might have some themes and things that we've seen before, but for the most part, I really loved it. And it is. Kaczynski, look, the reason that I'm so excited for Top Gun Maverick is because Kaczynski directed that as well. And I think that, he did direct Tron Legacy. I wanted that to be more. But the visual panache and style that he brought to Oblivion is certainly on display in Top Gun Maverick, and I can't wait. I think you're absolutely right. I think Oblivion is a solid science fiction film, and it's a film that anybody who's interested in science fiction, fantasy, and horror, any imagination connoisseur, I think would love that movie. So, yes, sir. All in. Great letter, Mario. Thank you for writing. And please say hello to your mother for me. Mrs. Catherine M. McClellan writes in. Catherine M. McClellan. Miss, I should say. Hello, Rob. I believe you mentioned a few days ago if your listeners had a depressing theme park story that they ought to share it. Well, I sure have one for you. Oh, no. My family visited Disneyland during the 50th anniversary of the theme park. It was an excuse for all my family, extended and beyond, to meet up and take one giant group photograph. At one point, once we split up into our separate families, my sister and I needed to use the restroom. Just before we opened the door, a professional Disney cast member, dressed fully in Snow White, stepped out and yelled in a harsh or stern tone a bunch of profanities to her assistant and how her heels hurt. Yeesh. These weren't PG profanity either. I won't repeat it, but let's just say the crowd around her, the crowd just patiently waiting to enter the main restroom building, was flush red with embarrassment. After she was able to rid her frustration, she quickly transitioned into her role as a cute, innocent princess and waved to the crowd and flashed a fake smile. Oh, man. Can you imagine some little girl seeing that? Oh, wow. That was years ago now, but I can't forget that odd experience in Disneyland. That's really all I wanted to share. I hope you have a wonderful day, listeners. Peace. Catherine. Catherine, I would have paid good money to be in Disneyland and hear R-rated or even X-rated profanities coming out of the mouth of Snow White, because I'm like that. That would have been worth the entire price of admission. I might even pay $100 just to get into the park to watch Snow White do that, even if it only lasted 30 seconds. Worth it. I would love to have seen the faces of those people. Oh, man. What does that make me? Does that make me a horrible person? Am I a horrible person, Catherine? What a great letter, though. Man, I'm glad somebody shared that story because, wow. Love it. Boy, Ash Chowan. Shout out to Ash Chowan, man. Dude, these pictures you're sending me, they will be on Midnight Metal. Woohoo! Patrick McDonald says, I just want to follow up my previous emails regarding the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Are there any updates on the festival? If the plans for judging, etc., have had to be canceled, it's no problem, but some form of acknowledgement would be appreciated. Zoe and I really enjoyed participating, and we have a lot of cool news regarding our shorts to share, so it'd be great to hear back. Patrick, let me tell you something. You'll be getting an email probably in the next 24 hours from me. The 700th show of Robservations, I've sent out all these queries to do interviews with people. A lot. I was going to make it my biggest interview show ever. Everyone's busy now. You know, back last May when we did the 400th, I could get anybody. Everybody wrote me back really quickly, and the 700 show is not going to be the kind of show that I wanted it to be. So you know what it's going to be? It's going to be a wrap-up of the film festival, a film festival extravaganza, and some other outstanding things that I haven't completed. I'm going to make the 700th show all about tying up loose ends so I can move into the future together. So you, sir, will be getting an email from me, and if you have any time on Monday, I'd like you to come on the show live with Zoe to maybe have a conversation, because wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Just saying. Anyway, so yes, Patrick, I have not forgotten. I can't wait to hear about your shorts. So there you go. Let's see, what else is there? What else is going on? This one comes from Julian Mushkin. Julian says, greetings to you, Rob, and the rest of my fellow Post-Geek Singularity members. It is May and beyond, this month's importance to Star Wars fans, my wedding anniversary of May 5th, Mother's Day and its proximity to June, and the encroaching advent of summer vacation for so many students. There are two other points of significance to this month as well. Memorial Day falls in May, and it is also the month in which Conan the Barbarian opened in North America. Yes, 39 years ago this month, director John Milius, actor Arnold Schwarzenegger, a supporting cast of greats including Mako, James Earl Jones, Max von Sydow, and Sandal Bergman brought Robert E. Howard's sword-wielding Cimmerian to life on the big screen. Despite being negatively viewed at the time for its violent content and screenwriting, reaction to it was mainly positive, based on its action sequences, production design, directing, visual style, effects, and Schwarzenegger's performance. Indeed, it has become a cornerstone in the body of genre films that came out in 1982, along with other movies like Blade Runner, The Dark Crystal, E.T., The Extraterrestrial, Poltergeist, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, The Sword and the Sorcerer, The Thing, Tron, even Cat People. Don't forget The Road Warrior. Conan would become a commercial success, grossing between $68.9 million and $79.1 million worldwide against a budget of $20 million. The movie went on to become a cult film and spawned the sequel film Conan the Destroyer in 1984, as well as a reboot production of the same name in 2011. But Julian, I hear the Post-Geek Singularity cry out, what does Conan the Barbarian have to do with Memorial Day? Well, let me tell you why I feel a sense of connection between that movie and a day which has become sacred, a sacred day of observance, centering on acknowledging, remembering, and thanking the millions of people in uniform who gave their lives for this country. Both my grandfathers served in the U.S. Army during the Second World War. Luckily, they survived the war, and I was able to spend many wonderful moments with both of them. As both of them are no longer with us on this mortal plane, I think it's fair to include them in my Memorial Day remembrance. As is common with many veterans of that conflict, my grandfathers did not talk much about their time during the war. My maternal grandfather, Grandpa Jack, only talked about his experiences once. After I'd seen a couple of pictures of him in uniform and found out he had some German bayonets in the attic somewhere, I asked him about his service. I was in middle school at the time, and reading about military history, and particularly World War II, were passions of mine. Grandpa Jack had been in the ETO, the European Theater of Operations, serving in an anti-aircraft battery. He told me that his unit had come into France after the D-Day invasion of Normandy and that they were pretty fresh with little or no combat experience. They were in a truck convoy of troops when the trucks came to a halt beside an open field. No one knew what was going on besides being in trucks with the covers up over the back. Grandpa Jack was right at the back of his truck when others started yelling about a pile of abandoned German equipment out in the field. Of course, my grandfather tried to get out like everyone else, only to see if they could score some war souvenirs, but in the rush he was knocked down, and other soldiers got to the field before him. It probably saved his life because, of course, the equipment was booby-trapped and the field was full of mines. At that point, souvenirs suddenly became less important to my grandfather. I asked him if he had brought back anything besides the bayonets, and he told me he'd brought back some Luger pistols. When I inquired if he still had them, he told me he had sold them for a cement mixer. He'd been building his house at the time, and a cement mixer was more important to him than the pistols. I was crestfallen then, my young teen boy brain not having really gotten the message Grandpa Jack was telling me at the time. Grandpa Mushkin was even more taciturn than Grandpa Jack when it came to talking about his experiences in the war. My grandmother had shown me a picture of him from his time in the service, rail-thin with a beer in his hand. She said he'd written to her about subsisting on nothing but K-rations and beer for months. All I ever had from him was a confirmation that yes, he'd been in the Pacific during his service and that he'd been involved in the Palao Islands campaign on the island of Pelelilu, codenamed Operation Stalemate 2 as part of the larger Operation Forager. I had read about that campaign in my Time Life books about World War II, so I knew about the tough fighting, knew about the high number of casualties. Intellectually, I knew. So I had asked my grandfather, was it really as tough as I've read? What was it like? I asked him if he'd been in any of the noted battles I'd read about. It was pretty bad. That was all he would say. One summer, maybe 1983, when I was vacationing as usual with my grandparents at their home on Mercer Island, I found myself very excited to see that Showtime, or HBO, I can't remember, which was going to play a Sword and the Sorcery double feature of The Sword and the Sorcerer followed by Conan the Barbarian. This was perfect. I'd not seen The Sword and the Sorcerer yet, but my dad and I had gone to see Conan when it was in the theaters, and I could not wait to see it again. So I made plans to watch this double bill. I would have had to watch it in the small dinette next to the kitchen, as this was the only TV with the particular subscription. The wet bar was also here, and Grandpa Mushkin often liked to relax in the dinette with a gin and tonic and watch TV, so I had to convince him that these movies would be some exciting fantasy pieces. I assured him that my dad had already taken me to Conan. He agreed, and we settled in to watch the movies. I don't really recall any of his reactions to The Sword and the Sorcerer other than wincing a bit at some of the sword fighting scenes. To be honest, I found the movie pretty silly, and I've only watched it twice that I can recall. The film is notable to me mostly for the triple-bladed projectile sword and the dragon archers with the flaming bows. Not because they were good, but because they were so ridiculous. Then came the main feature. I remember constantly looking over at my grandfather to see how he was reacting. Again, he winced a lot at the swordplay action, but this time, with the copious blood splatter present in the movie, he was moved to exclaim, "Egad!" or "Oh my God!" at particularly violent scenes. He did not finish watching the movie with me, but went off to bed. Years have passed since that night, and in those years Hollywood achieved ever-increasing heights in portraying to movie audiences the horrific carnage inflicted in war. Movies like Platoon and Saving Private Ryan have, according to many vets, achieved a verisimilitude that has allowed them to state that's what it was like. The HBO series Band of Brothers in the Pacific, both excellent shows based on non-fiction books by the same name, have followed movies like Saving Private Ryan in trying to realistically depict the brutal reality of warfare. I had read both books before either series came out. Both are very fine reads. Both affected me strongly on an emotional level. Astonishing to me, my reading of Band of Brothers changed how I related to Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings series. This is a series I reread every 5 years or so, and after reading Band of Brothers, on my next reading of Lord of the Rings, I found myself viewing the story of the Fellowship and the conflict in Middle-earth completely in a new light. I saw the Fellowship's bonds forged in the fires of conflict, just like they had been for the men of easy company. I never served in the military, but many of my friends did, and I listened as one friend, who had been Air Police in the U.S. Air Force, described to me the absolute fucking terror he felt as he and his service dog were pinned down behind his Jeep by automatic weapons fire while he called for backup. And then I had the opportunity to watch The Pacific. This series really hit me hard, particularly as the campaign in the Palao Island chain is a major event for several of the series' characters. I remember what I'd read in my Time Life books about the campaign. I remember the paintings by Tom Lay, who had gone in with the first Marine waves to hit the beach. Those paintings painfully illustrated the horrors, exhaustion, and sheer mind-numbing brutality experienced by soldiers in war. One of his paintings, The 2,000-Yard Stare, forcefully brings the viewer face-to-face with one Marine who had been pushed beyond the breaking point. Marine commanders had predicted the battle would be over, and the island secured within 4 days. Instead, it took the Marine Division and the U.S. Army's 81st Infantry Division over 2 months before they could declare the island secured. Total casualties for the U.S. forces were 7,919, with 1,460 of those killed, giving this operation the highest casualty rate of any other amphibious operation during the Pacific War. This series brought all of these things into fuller focus for me. They were no longer just facts on a page. And remembering that my grandfather had fought there, now there was a personal connection. I thought back to that night watching Conan the Barbarian with my grandfather, and I realized that what he was reacting to might not have had anything to do with the movie and everything to do with his past service. Perhaps not finishing the movie with me told me everything I needed to know about his experiences in the Pacific War. I miss my grandfathers, and I hope that their spirits are truly resting in peace. To those who served and gave all, I thank you and salute you for your sacrifice. If you took the time to read this rumination during your show, Rob, I thank you as well. Cheers, Julian Mushkin. Julian, what a fantastic letter, and if you don't mind, I'm going to re-record this letter, and I'm going to release it as a standalone short take on Memorial Day in honor of your grandfathers and my father, who also served in World War II. What a great letter. Thank you for writing in. Really, really fantastic. Calvin Bowles writes in. And of course, Calvin is the father of Braxton. Dear Rob, first some good news. Braxton is going to the 55-year Mission Convention in August in Las Vegas. We already have our tickets. Man, I didn't get to go to Vegas till I was 21. Braxton's 6. I mean, Braxton is going to be pulling a Fredo. Don't tell him what that is. Now, for the reason I wrote, Braxton and I were talking Trek as we normally do, and for some reason we started talking about the Prime Directive. This got Braxton to ask, what would happen if you break the Prime Directive? I told him that you'd go to jail. Then he asked, what if you broke it for a good reason? I asked him, what would be a good reason? He replied, well, suppose bad guys on the planet kept people in slavery and a crew decided to free them and have them on the ship. Then the Federation would put them in jail and return the slaves because they can't interfere, I said. At this, Braxton exclaimed, well, then the crew would have to run away. But the Federation would chase them down, I said. Then Braxton said, Daddy, wouldn't that be a cool Star Trek show? There would be a crew on the run trying to find a planet for these slaves and running away from the Federation. They would be chased by people who were once their friends. But wouldn't that make the Federation the bad guys, I asked? He said, no, because the Federation would be acting on what they felt is right. They even may feel sorry for that crew. I think my son gets what Star Trek is better than the people who do new Star Trek. Tell us what you think of Braxton's idea. Do you think his show would be better than what they're doing now? Well, you know what, Calvin? Once again, your son Braxton proves that you, sir, are doing some good parenting. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea. One of my favorite Star Trek novels, as a matter of fact, perhaps you could read this to Braxton, is a book called Prime Directive. That is by Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens. It's one of my favorite Star Trek novels, and I don't want to ruin the surprise of what it's about, but my father, when I was a really young kid, would read to me the James Blish episode adaptations, and I think those are the first stories I remember being read to me by anyone, really. And maybe you could read the book to Braxton over the course of, the summer as he goes to bed at night, because it is a fantastic book, and tell him I sent you because he asked about the Prime Directive. But yes, it's not surprising to me that 6-year-olds can come up with better ideas for Star Trek than 3 seasons of what we received with Star Trek Discovery. But there you go. I'm sure Braxton cares more about Star Trek than anybody currently working on the franchise. So you tell Braxton I said that. And kudos to the both of you. Let's see. This one comes from Omar94. Hi, Rob, and depending on which co-host there is, either Guten Tag Dieter or hello and welcome Emma Bannon for being on camera for the first time on Let's Get Physical Media. She hasn't said she'd come on yet, but I'm hoping to get her to come on. Since you almost always show home media for movies, with the occasional showing of video games like how Dieter showed us The Last of Us last week, this has me wondering if the two of you have home media for TV shows, and if you do, maybe show all of us. I don't collect home media anymore, but I used to have some for TV shows when I was younger. One was a proper TV show, while the other two were a series of short films, which I guess could count as a TV show, so to speak, since they have appeared on television before. The first show I had was Spider-Man, the new animated series, which came out after the 2002 Sam Raimi movie and had Neil Patrick Harris as the voice of Spider-Man. It was a 13-episode show, but the disc I had showed 8 episodes. The other 2 discs I had for the short film series were for Popeye and the Three Stooges. The disc I had for Popeye showed 3 short films: Popeye the Sailor meets Sinbad the Sailor, Popeye the Sailor meets Ali Baba's 40 Thieves, and Aladdin and His Wonderful Lamp. The disc I had for the Three Stooges had 4 short films, one with Curly and the other 3 with Shemp. Those 4 short films were Disorder in the Court, Malice in the Palace, Brideless Groom, Sing a Song of Sixpence. I remembered having those discs when I was younger, so that was what made me interested in knowing if the two of you had home media for TV shows. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, I want to thank you for that letter. I showed on Let's Get Physical Media, I showed the Battlestar Galactica series. I have the complete series box set, and then I have Razor and the TV movies. And I've got, obviously, Star Trek. I don't have a lot of TV. I have the entire series of Miami Vice on Blu-ray, so I could definitely show that. As a matter of fact, I've recently rearranged where my physical media collection resides in here in the Robservatory, and I've been doing a little bit of realphabetizing and certainly rearranging and rejiggering, and I'm going to take another picture to show you what it looks like, because it's pretty most impressive, if I do say so myself. So there you go. Absolutely. So, let's see what you guys have to say. Why not? Let's jump in and see what you all have to say right now. I don't know. Willow is here. Willow says, "What did you think of the Enterprise?" Oh. Willow says, "What did you think of the Enterprise episode Cogenitor? I don't know if it's coincidental or not, but it's definitely got shades of The Handmaid's Tale." Willow, not surprisingly, you're asking me about one of my favorite episodes of Enterprise. Cogenitor is, I believe, a second season episode. And in the episode, it's actually very cool. It starts out that the Enterprise the NX-01 is investigating a sun. And they're part of the corona of the sun, and they run across another alien spacecraft that is also there examining the same sun. What are the odds? And they meet, it's a first contact situation where they meet these very cool aliens, very nice people. And it's amazing, and they're like, "Oh my God, we're both explorers, and we've met in this corona, the sun, and blah, 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 it's great." And then you find out that this new race, and I forget their name, forgive me, I forget their name, they have 3 genders, and they need 3 genders to procreate. And maybe it's the captain, his wife, I don't quite remember. They're pregnant, they're going to have a child, and their third gender is basically not just, it's worse than a second-class citizen. They see this third gender not really a slave race, but just kind of irrelevant. And this really nice bunch of people that you love, they treat this third gender horribly, really horribly. And it really it makes you question everything about them. And of course, Trip can't deal with this. And he's like, "This is terrible, and I'm going to teach this person to read," and basically break the Prime Directive. And there isn't a Prime Directive yet, but this is one of the things where it's an episode all about imposing our values on a society that's very different from us, and how that's going to go down, how that works. I think Cogenitor is a wonderful episode. It's a great science fiction episode. It's a great First Contact episode. It's a great Star Trek episode, and poses some really difficult questions, ethical questions and considerations. I think it's great. I love it. I think it's one of the high points of Enterprise, and it's certainly a compelling episode. Man, I'd love to read your take on that if you're done with your Voyager reviews, and you know you're not. But I would be very curious to read your take on cogenitor. Terrier Tiberius Mork sends in a super chat and says, Bond. Norway bond. A Norwegian favor. We give the U.S. corn, you give us peace. Blofeld was Euro. Don't forget, who is the best Blofeld? Chimney. Who was the best Blofeld? That's a good question. I leave that to you. Was Telly Savalas your favorite? Was Donald Pleasance your favorite? Was Charles Gray your favorite? Making mud pies, 007. Who was your favorite? I liked Max von Sydow in Never Say Never Again and kind of wished he had played Blofeld in the main Bond franchise, but what can you do? Kelvin Wellborn says, the opposite of James Bond, we have John Drake. Yes, we do. George Smiley and David Callan. Yes, that is all true. John Drake. Triple X says, well, the Triple X franchise was supposed to be the one that knocked Bond off the top. The beginning of the first Triple X film even has a spy in a tux being killed at a rave. Rob Cohen thought the Bond franchise became old and stale. Was he correct? I don't think it was old and stale. I just think it's been, let's call it moribund for a while. Austin Powers parodied Bond, and the first film was actually funny. Is Bond outdated? The old films are indeed a product of their time. Oh, I'm reminded that of my blackness when we see a cop and I'm on the road. Anyway, Bond is just a fantasy. No harm. Well, Triple X. Oh, one more thing, Triple X says. The world is indeed different depending on your ethnicity or gender, depending on who you're dealing with. That being said, I'm a Bond fan. Have been since the 1960s. I've enjoyed every actor who's portrayed 007, even Peter Sellers. Well, you, sir, 007 fan you are, Triple X, you and I definitely park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. But no, I agree. You know, look, everybody on the planet has to deal with all kinds of differences depending on who you're talking to. You know, depending on where you are on the planet. And I definitely feel you. But at the end of the day, you know, when we talk about Bond being a sexist, misogynist, cis male, white male, whatever, somebody's got to do what he's got to do, or we would have lost the world. Hugo Drax would have poisoned us all with his killer orchids. Carl Stromberg would have nuked us all back into the Stone Age, and he would have been living pretty with his beautiful people underground in his Atlantis. You know, so I think we need capable people out there on the front lines. That's why Memorial Day is so important, to honor our men and women who serve. And we need them. We need people. We need capable people who know what they're doing to save us from ourselves, my God. Brendan Sheehy sends in a tip and says, Rob, have you seen Boss Level? I have not, but Joe Carnahan directed it. I really want to see it. Starring Frank Grillo and Mel Gibson. It's a novel twist on the Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow formula with cool action, a strong cast, and it even brings enough of its own unique flavor and quirks to the time loop subgenre. Yeah, it looks great to me. And the video game thing, Boss Level, having to keep playing over and over again to figure it out, kind of like Edge of Tomorrow. Rob, great physical media. Oh, this is Justin Toner, by the way. Justin Toner says, our own moderator, Rob, great physical media day today. Vinegar Syndrome's halfway to Black Friday sale started with new titles revealed. Arrow announced stuff including David Lynch's Dune in 4K. The spice must flow, and my money will flow into their wallets with that release. Which cover are you going to get? I'm going to get their beautiful Sandworm cover. And don't forget they're putting out 4K versions of Cat of Nine Tails and Four Fly. Or is it Four Fly? Yeah, Four Flies on Grey Velvet and Cat of Nine Tails, the Argento films. Yeah, so there you go. Anonymous sends in a tip and says, you, sir, you and I park our Aston Martins in the same quartermaster's garage. And guess what? Oh, I don't have it next to me. I finally got my 1/8 scale. I have all the pieces for my 1/8 scale Aston Martin. So I'm going to build it. The Eagle Moss Aston Martin. I've been 2.5 years, or not 2.5 years, 22 months, I think. Almost 2 years. Gerard Leon says, I'm sure you've been asked this many times, but who would you want, or even more importantly, need to be the next Bond to properly continue the legacy of the character? Give me a ping, Vasily. One ping only. Vasily, lose that shirt. Thank you for this. This is, you know, I love my geeky shirts. This was a company, I forget, I'll go full frame on this for you. I forget which company I didn't like a lot of their shirts, but this one, I don't know if you can see, It says Crazy Ivan right here. And of course, this is the Red October, one ping, and then it says 1990. I mean, this shirt, I saw the shirt and I'm like, click. So it makes me happy that you like the shirt. So thank you for that. Very much appreciated. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, kind souls, gentle beings, all of you. The answer to Gerard's answer, what am I saying? I was going to say blah, blah, blah. So here's what I think about. Who would I want to play James Bond? Do I want Tom Hardy? Tom Hardy could be good, but, you know, Tom Hardy looks more... I can't unsee Bronson. If you guys haven't seen Bronson, Tom Hardy's amazing in Bronson. And also him as Bane. You know, I have to tell you, I really enjoyed Richard Madden in Bodyguard, the 6-part BBC episodes of Bodyguard. And I know that I think Richard Madden could be a good Bond. He's youthful, he's incredibly handsome, and I think he could play the part. I like Richard Madden. I mean, I know he's been talked about. That's somebody who I would enjoy. I just like Richard Madden. We'll see. I mean, I might change my opinion if he's not good in the Eternals. But I did like him in Bodyguard. There's a lot of Bondisms in that. So I could see him taking over the franchise. I mean, Tom Hardy, if they went with him, he's much more of a rough and tumble, thuggish Bond that has more of a Sean Connery vibe to him. And I could see that happening too. I mean, I wouldn't object. Certainly wouldn't object. I could definitely see that happening. But those are the two people that I think of most. But, you know, people talked about Tom Hiddleston being Bond. If Tom Hiddleston was Bond, he would be more of the Roger Moore, I think, Bond, because he's got that wry humor to him. He's very funny. But, you know, if you've seen the movie High Rise, which I recommend, Ben Wheatley's movie High Rise, which is an adaptation of J.G. Ballard's book of the same name, Hiddleston was ripped as hell in that movie. He looked great, and I think that he could definitely be Bond. So, yeah, definitely. Darth Plato says, people are different. I knew a guy that was a boxer from the 1930s. Lost both legs in the Pacific. Conan the Barbarian was on TV, and he called it a Saturday morning cartoon. So my dad made me change the channel. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Stubble McShave says, we in Sweden have our version of Bond. Carl Gustaf Gilbert Hamilton was a man of noble line with left-leaning views who was drafted to the Secret Service. He's been portrayed on film by Stellan Skarsgård and Peter Stormare. I might write a letter on it. Ooh, I'd love to know more about that, Stubble. That sounds great to me. Fantastic. I'm in. Count me in on that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls from across the 28 known galaxies, I'm going to bring this episode 697 of Robservations, to an end. And I want to thank everybody for generously supporting the channel through tips and super chats and sending me letters. You can send me letters at the Burnettwork.net. Now, I want to remind you of our new feature, Everyone's Story. Everyone's Story, which is your stories. And what I want you to do is I want you to make little videos of yourselves and make sure that we can hear it and see it. I mean, I know not everyone's technically proficient, but you know what looks good and what doesn't. If you can send me a short video, let's make sure that they're not more than 5 minutes. We want 5 minutes or less. They can even be as short as you want, but no more than 5 minutes. And it's going to be a new weekly feature. And I want to receive everybody's videos by Wednesday. So Wednesday of next week, June 2nd. Please get me your videos. And the first topic is, tell us about your first kiss. As I said, it can be any story. If your first kiss was an aunt that didn't like you, that laid a sloppy smack right on your kisser, or maybe a dog licked you, a giant Saint Bernard, and drooled all over your face, or you got to kiss the person you were dreaming of kissing and it was bad, or it was good. And as I said earlier, you can also tell me a story about how your first kiss might have been an upper persuasion to a lower invasion. I don't know. It's up to you. You got to tell me, because remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. So what we want from you is we want you to tell us yours. And also, next week we are going to officially open up I mean, we're going to tout the short story competition. Once the film festival gets wrapped up, the short story competition, because my goal would be to have the short story, the book, the finished published, the book of all these stories, because yes, we are publishing them in a book form. You don't get the book free, though. You'll have to pay for that, although the people who wrote stories will get one free. But yes, we're going to publish a book with all the short stories. And remember, the book is called The Imagination Connoisseurs, and it can be, your story can be anything. Who knows what it's going to be? It could be about, I don't know, but somehow within your story, I ask that you deal with the idea of what is an imagination connoisseur. What does an imagination connoisseur do? What does it mean to you? What do you think they are? I want to hear all about that from you. So that's where we are. And on that note, I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank the Richard. I want to thank Joshua Levesque and Robert Pariso. And Justin Toner is also here. Louise X. Sparrow. I don't know. I just love saying Louise X. Sparrow. I want to thank you all for being the moderators that you are. And to note, this weekend, Midnight Metal. Tonight, just me. Tomorrow, Dave Parker is joining me, and we are having our very special guest. We are having CK Smile from the band Chaosium, all the way from Switzerland, to talk about his career and their band and their recent success on YouTube. That will be tomorrow at 1 a.m. PST, 1 a.m. So there you go, Chaosium. Join us, like the Evil Dead would say. And on that note, you already heard me say every person you meet. So all I will say now is, everyone, thank you for joining me for Robservations episode number 697, the show about something. And I will ask you to have a better day. And join us on Midnight Metal tonight at midnight Pacific time.